Yeah,
because it's
I
definitely.
witnessed that. I witnessed that firsthand. Like my older brother, I have two older brothers. They both have kids. And the my middle brother, he has three kids, and the 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So they knocked them out like back to back to back. And so, back when they weren't 7, 5, and 4, and it was like three kids under 4, or like a 3-year-old and a newborn and like a 1-year-old, right? Like when that was the case, uh I witnessed firsthand all of the structure that they had put in place for their firstborn thrown out the window to just
Yeah,
survive. And that makes total sense. I was like, you have to do whatever you can do at this point. You're outnumbered, you're outgunned, you're outmanned. Like there's nothing to do but to like hunker down and try and come like survive the storm for the next few years until they can kind of take care of themselves briefly.
oh, totally. Or kind of to take care of each other. Like you can get the older one to start to kind of understand how they can help. But oh man, yeah, like that's a traveling circus. Right? Like you got to be, and I think that that's part of it. Is even when we were traveling with the baby to the games and back, we had some really tight connections, and it was just traveling through COVID. It was just a bit of chaos already, um, and I was very stressed. And I feel like looking at it in hindsight too, I'm like, it doesn't help anything, Michelle was happy to remind me of that. But we're just kind of like, if you have three kids now and you're doing that thing through, like you've just got to be like water. Like you just got to let things flow right off of you. It's cool. Like nothing's a big deal, because as soon as like the energy gets amped up and like everybody gets fired up, like, oh boy, I can only imagine, right?
Yeah.
And I know that's something that like area for personal growth where I've got to be much better at, because I could see it happening in the future, and I don't want that to be the case, right?
Yeah. I tell my wife, so she has a sister who has a toddler, like a 3-year-old. He just turned 3. And they've come and visited a couple times this past year. They came while she was pregnant, and then they came again like a couple weeks ago, when we had like a 1-month old basically. And the difference between dealing with a pregnant wife and then dealing with a toddler, or dealing with a 1-month old and dealing with a toddler, is like night and day. And I kept telling them, I was like, listen, I get frustrated dealing with a toddler, not because like there's anything wrong with him, but because I haven't had the 2 or 3 years of training that the toddler would have given me, right? Like by the time my son becomes a toddler, I've had 2 to 3 years of like learning his language, trying to deal with them,
Yeah.
setting some sort of foundation with them, like developing my own patience in having to have a conversation with a toddler. Whereas like, I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. Like I can deal with my son, I can deal with my relationship with my son because I understand what his needs are and I understand how to take care of him. I understand what my role is in a general sense in his life at this point. But like once I'm dealing with a toddler, that 2-year gap of like the progressive overload of training of dealing with a human being growing into that is too much. It's like stepping into like a 100-meter dash against Usain Bolt. Like there's no way I'm gonna fucking win. There's no way, because I can't deal with a 3-year-old in any long-term period of time because I haven't learned how to do that. And I think that's like a really interesting like built-in thing. Like you adapt and get used to children so quickly, but it happens at the time marks that it happens with the kid. Like imagine adopting like a 3-year-old. Like a new toddler out of nowhere would be almost impossible to deal with. And at least for me, I don't know. Like I just feel like that idea of having patience, it's like built into the system. Like you learn it along with them as they grow up.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I haven't really thought much about that. And I think probably, in that, if you adopted a 2 or 3 year old situation, I know people who have the patience and the ability that it would be fine. And I'm
Saints,
not that guy,
saints in your life. Yeah.
right? Like I think that my strengths lie in other places, and so I think that that's a cool point that you're like, yeah, it's kind of built into the system where just by virtue of getting to that stage, you've been through the training process to get there. And yeah, I think that that's the thing, right? It's job site skills. Like you learn it as you go. And then you sort of I think that that's the reality is it's a lot of it. And like I said, where there's only so many things that people can teach you that still holds true. I think a lot of it, every generation we reinvent the wheel a little bit because there's new barriers and there's new boundaries. And now 3-year-olds have cell phones, and it's like, I don't know, like, your grandpa can't tell you how to deal with that because it didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And so those are like interesting things that to look at now. But the other, I don't know, it'll be fun to see where we go once we have like another kid maybe, and see when you get that experience. We'll see the outnumbered thing. I'm from a family of 3 as well, and so is Michelle, of 3 kids. And so yeah, I think when you get to that point where you're outnumbered, I think that things change a little bit.
Yeah.
It's there's something nice about being able to just like each take one kid and be like, all right, I got this one. And then if you can't do that, I think it changes a bit. But yeah, that's a good point about the kind of you train the kids and they train you as well, right?